So I went to the main leader that I was friends with and really liked. We'd connected in other areas. And I said, my child has come out and bisexual is first. It was bisexual. And I don't know what to do about this, what to think. And her first words to me were, it's a sin and you can't accept it. And I thought, that that's not an answer from Jesus. That's not the Holy Spirit speaking. That's something's wrong with that answer. And there was not any, oh my gosh, how are you doing? How's your child doing? What do you think about it? There was none of that. It was just, it's a sin and you can't accept it, which I know now is a fear response. It's holding on to a belief system that turns out it's pretty fragile if they can be tripped up by somebody coming out.
Welcome to the Soul Not Skin podcast, a virtual living room, a safe, welcoming place to land where you can pull up a chair and share stories straight from the heart. I'm your host, Jen Slumac, or as my students like to call me, Miss Jen. We talk about the real human experience, the hard stuff, the wonderful stuff, and the messy, everyday growth that shapes who we become. Real stories, real people, real insight, becoming who we are. Settle in, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi there, and welcome to another episode. We have an incredible guest today. I'm so happy to share her with my audience. Susan and I met a while ago. I'll tell you about that in a minute. First, let me tell you who she is. Susan Cottrell has this fierce, loving, don't mess with me mom vibe. She's an international speaker whose TEDx talk has more than 5 million views. She's affectionately known as our favorite affirming matriarch. She's a prominent voice for the LGBTQ plus community and expresses her authentic love for them and their families and helps especially in areas of faith. And that's the truth. That's been part of my experience with Susan too. She spent 20 plus years in the non-affirming evangelical church, has a Master of Arts in Theological Studies, and has a top-ranked Freed Hearts podcast with millions of followers and 5 critically acclaimed books about love, faith, and empowering the LGBTQ plus community and their families. And she sees love as the healing foundation of family, faith, and community. She and her husband, Rob, have been married for nearly 40 years, and they still like each other. They do. I've seen it. 40 years, and they have 5 children, including 2 transgender sons and 5 grandchildren. Susan, I am so happy to have you here today.
I'm so happy to be here. I was looking so forward to doing this with you.
I did my best to sort of brag about you, but would you go ahead and tell us from your own words a little who you are?
Well, I am a mother of 5, and we were going merrily along in the church, more or less. The cracks were beginning to show. But then 2 of our kids came out, one after the other, as queer or whatever word. Sorry, let me mess that. I messed it up.
Well, no, you know what, Susan, it's okay to stumble there because I think what the audience may not realize, or maybe they do, including the people in the LGBT community, is that when you are an advocate and a leader in this space, it's very challenging to know which words to use because different terminology lands differently with different people. I prefer the term queer. I think it's just easier.
Right.
But that's very offensive to some people. And so I think that was a heartfelt stumble and that we can keep it in.
Okay.
Because it shows that you care.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and it's a learning curve to learn all the names and the pronouns and all the different words. And you do learn it because you care. And if you don't learn it, it's probably because I feel like if I can't put forth the effort to do what my children need from me, then I'm not really hearing them. So, all right. So 2 of our kids came out, and I knew in that very moment we'd never fit in the church again. And they would never come. And And it occurred to me that something was really wrong with this picture. Even if the church didn't agree, there's something wrong that we would be now um, treated differently, seen differently. And so I began this journey to understand what's going on. Why is this such a big deal? Why is the church so, uh, you know, adamant about this? And it's been
And
a
Susan,
huge journey of discovery. Go ahead.
didn't you, so this was an evangelical church, and didn't you go to your friends at church seeking
I did.
support
I did.
around this new understanding of
Yeah.
your children?
Yeah. So
What
I
kind
went,
of advice were you given?
yeah. So I went to the main leader that I was friends with and really liked. We'd connected in other areas. And I said, my child has come out. And bisexual is first, it was bisexual. And I don't know what to do about this, what to think. And her first words to me were, it's a sin and you can't accept it. And I thought, that that's not an answer from Jesus. That's not the Holy Spirit speaking. That's something's wrong with that answer. And there was not any, oh my gosh, how are you doing? How's your child doing? What do you think about it? There was none of that. It was just, it's a sin and you can't accept it, which I know now is a fear response. It's holding on to a belief system that turns out it's pretty fragile if they can be tripped up by somebody coming out as gay or transgender or something. But I didn't know that then. I just knew it was a bad answer. And so I went to another friend, another leader that I respected and really enjoyed, and she said the same thing. And I thought, where are they getting this? What's the manual about this? And then um, somebody close to us outed my child to my sister, who then called me and gave me the same exact spiel and added in parts about, don't let the devil get a foothold. And, you've got to be strong, all this stuff. And I thought, this is not a humane response. There, yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, and thank you for sharing all of that. And also thank you for pointing out the fear response, because I think that folks hold dearly to their tradition of faith
Yes,
and to the values that they were raised with. And for a very long time in a lot of people's lives, to be fair, this whole issue was not on the table. It just wasn't
yes,
in people. It wasn't on
yes,
people's radar when they
yes,
were growing up, and
right.
so it's all new, right?
It's all
And
new.
what's always struck me is, what is the practical outcome of you following that guidance? Like, what
Right.
happens if you tell your
Oh,
child it's a sin and I can't accept it?
well, we've dealt now in our work, which we'll get to, but with countless families who did follow their advice and and it leads to estrangement. It leads to the child's self-hatred. And in one case I'm thinking of especially, her child ended up dying because of the changes in him from having been basically basically rejected. This part of him was rejected, and his family was as loving as you can be and still not embrace this boy's queerness. I say boy, we're talking about adults. They're adults, young adults. But they were as loving as could be, but said you can't be gay. It's not, God doesn't like it, and all of this stuff that he was then in a cataclysmic situation and did everything he could. Here's the thing: these um, LGBTQ people do everything that's asked of them. They've been through Exodus International, which is now shut down because it didn't work.
Thank God.
Yes, but all kinds of therapy and reparative therapy, which is not reparative and it's not therapy, and all of these things that they've been through to try to become straight. But the families, the pastors over them have not been through these rigors at all. They haven't looked into it to this depth. They just keep saying it's a sin and you can't accept it. And I think that's unjust. That is really unjust. Do you hear what I'm
And
saying?
what you, yeah, what I
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Um, you're absolutely right about the impact on a young person who has
Yes.
discovered their sexuality to be different than what
Yeah.
we would call the norm.
Yeah.
The impact of having, uh, being told that that's a sin and that that's, unacceptable.
Right.
Things like don't let the devil get the foothold.
Right.
Here's the thing about sin, right? It covers all of us.
Yes. Yes.
In the story of Christianity,
Right.
sin is humanity's nature.
Right.
And sin
Right.
is, in my understanding, anything that we put before our relationship with God.
Right.
Anything. There's a
Yeah.
large range of things that we
Right.
do that we
Right.
care more about than our relationship with God. It took me a lot of delving into the faith of my youth, and my father's a retired Presbyterian minister.
Yeah.
And so it took me a lot of digging back into the roots of these things and getting to know Jesus, which took forever because I had to find a safe place to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had several of those encounters that were horrible. But the point being, it's not different than anything else. It becomes the opinion of people out of
Right.
fear. And sometimes what I've discovered too, Susan, is that it's fear. The pastor is afraid that this is going to reflect poorly on my church.
Right.
The
Right.
parents are afraid that this is going to say something about me.
Right.
And it's not about the queer child, but I assure you the suicide rate is far higher
Yes.
with folks who identify as LGBTQ. I
Yes.
certainly made several attempts on my own life growing up,
So
and
sorry.
alcoholism consumed
Mm-hmm.
me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yes.
so the very small piece that you've brought up so far is so deep and nuanced
Yes. Yes.
and rarely investigated. What were
Yes.
you going to say?
Well, I want to hasten to say, to add to what you're saying, to say, yes, all of us, make mistakes, do things, whatever. But being gay, we have found in our own, you know, deep exploration of theology that is not a sin. Being queer, being transgender, all those pieces of LGBTQ are not a sin. When, a young woman was talking to her father saying, yes, Dad, I do sin, but being queer is not that. And because, and that's deeper in the conversation. And there may be a lot of listeners here who right now think that is a sin. So to your point, what about all the other things? It's not a sin. Because here's the thing about sin. Like, it's often compared to alcoholism or drug addiction. You wouldn't enable your child to be an alcoholic, would you? Okay, well, here's the thing about that. If you're an alcoholic, you can quit. If you're gay, you cannot quit. You can only deny it and go back in the closet. But we have 60-year-olds who come out because the closet did not make it go away. Okay. Next, if you do quit, your life gets better for everyone, including you.
Quit drinking.
Quit drinking,
If
yes.
you quit drinking.
Yes, that's right. If you're gay and you quit, which really means going back in the closet, life doesn't get better for you. It might be easier for those around you because now they don't have to deal with this question they really have not looked into, or they wouldn't be where they are. But for you, you're now driven in the closet. Now you're driven to, as you said, deeper depression, self-hatred, harmful behavior, suicide ideation. All of these things come from not being at peace with who you are. We know that from a mental health standpoint. And so to drive somebody into that, to say, no, you're not gay, you're not really gay, you're not transgender, that's just a popular thing that you've hooked onto. Listen, it's very popular. I mean, in our little group, in our following, I know a lot of transgender people, and I never once thought, maybe I'm transgender. I am not.
Right.
It's not
Yeah.
something you decide to be.
It doesn't rub off on you.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
rub
It
off on
doesn't.
you. And, we have a lot more left-handed people now than when they were punishing you severely for being left-handed. Is that because there are more of them? No, it's because they can be safe being left-handed. They just were closeted back then. So even if it appears that there are a lot more LGBTQ people, it's only because that we've made forward motion in safety to come out, which right now feels like that's, still in flux and a big battle right now. But to drive
And I'll
people in
tell
the
you,
closet is not the answer.
absolutely. What I was going to say is just to sort of also mention, we talk about the church and it being unaccepting of LGBTQ and, the harm that it does. And one of the things that I like to do work on with the community of the podcast is church hurt in general, but that tends to land a lot in the gay community also.
Right.
But I do want to clarify, I grew up, my parents were together till I was 9. And up until that time, I was a PK, a preacher's kid.
Right.
And went to church. And I don't recall anybody damning homosexuals.
Right.
I don't recall anybody saying negative things, but there was silence. There was no representation.
Right.
And so at 9, while in hindsight, I know I had crushes on girls, I didn't know at the time. I wasn't a sexual being yet.
Right. Sure.
But the thing is that even in the silence, right, we fill in the blanks.
Right.
And that's not necessarily abuse from the church or abuse from the parents, and we all, gay or straight, we all have different things in our lives that there was silence on growing up that we filled in the blanks that harmed us, right?
Right.
But we're talking about, in particular, like the very clear guidance that you got from the people in your church.
Right. Right.
And there are some things later in my life that were pretty hard to handle.
Yes.
Coming from the mouths of the people who are supposed to love me most.
Yes.
And it was their fear.
Yes.
It was their fear.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lack of love for me. It was their fear, but it still lands.
Sure.
And it still cripples my sense of self-love.
Right. Well, any parent, most parents don't actively set out to harm their child, but their own wounds end up harming their child. That's just
absolutely
parenting truths.
Sure.
And so the church was not actively harming most of them, but I remember the 70s and what's his name? Sorry, Jerry Falwell, feeding poison into the churches. He actively turned people against the LGBTQ community and the whole moral majority, and the response to that was the moral majority is neither, because it was spoon feeding fear into the churches, into the whole community. And I remember that. I was young, but I remember it. And so it was a real thing. We know that churches do the best they can, usually. But when the construct is men in power who are used to wielding their authority and not used to really questioning things, then it makes it toxic, like a dad who's authoritarian and won't listen to the kids or the wife even about things that are wrong. And so it's really been problematic. So a lot of it is neglect, but a lot of it is kind of learned responses of the churches. And those things don't just disappear when you
Right.
have been taught this fear or even hatred toward a community. That doesn't disappear. It
Right.
just kind of continues and you forget the source, but it's still there. So,
Well, and that's really important, I think, what you just pointed out. And I think it just sort of builds on my own understanding now. It took me till I was about, mid 30s, maybe early 40s to really understand. Number one, it started with doing my own work in my 20s. And it got to the point where I started looking at my childhood and realizing, I had a hard time sort of reconciling the amount of love I received alongside the traumatic events that I endured. I had a really hard time. And what I finally came to is I was a little person in a house run by two people who were hurting.
Yes.
They were hurting. They were also successful. They were also very much loving, but they were hurting.
Yes.
And that impacts a little one.
Yes, sure.
Right? And so I always want to be really careful about blaming.
Yes.
Like you just said, because people, we are a mess. Whether I'm a parent or a child or queer or straight or minister or not, people are a mess. It's the nature of humanity. Human beings are a mess.
Yes.
Okay. The real challenge in my perspective, or in my experience, the real challenge was coming to a real clear understanding that my problem was with the messy people that identify as Christian, that are in a church.
Yes.
And my issue was not coming from or mine to worry about with God's self. When I healed just enough to realize that I didn't, like, people can be wrong.
Right.
They don't know me. They haven't walked in my shoes.
Right.
I know that I love.
Yeah.
I know that I love God. I know that God loves me. I know that when I've been able to navigate and heal from some of the wounds that come from my identity, then I've been able to bear wonderful fruit.
Yes. Yes. And and the church, it has inherited a lot of beliefs. It does pass on beliefs it's inherited over decades and centuries, and we are messy, but also we're beautiful and we're profound, and we bear the image of God. We are a hologram of God. And part of the deconstruction that happened for us, and as we went through this and we thought, okay, I'm interrupting myself here to say, when you find out that the church, and we did do this, find out the church is wrong about LGBTQ people, which has become such a foundational piece, it seems, then suddenly we're saying, what else are they wrong about? And so that's where deconstruction happens, because the church has built a construct inside of us as we go there every week. And now we have to deconstruct and relook at all the pieces. But one of the other foundational pieces they teach is that we are fallen, broken humanity, that identity has basically overtaken this image of God that we are. And it took some searching, and I'm talking about through prayers and tears and, God, show me, to discover.
Seminary.
I did go to seminary for this because it was so important to me to really find out what's going on. And we had just started Freed Hearts when the door opened I'd say, God, open the door for seminary for me. And I went there, and boy, was that a big ride to see all the things I'd been taught that were um, traditions of men, Jesus called them, rather than really inherent in the book, in the Bible, or even in the early Christians' belief system. So yes, there was a lot of deconstruction that happened. I really began to see how much this fallen brokenness, it's not in the Bible the way it's been taught. It's not there. But the image of God is there. And it's no wonder if you tell people for centuries that they're worms and lowly,
Yeah.
pieces of trash, which much of that rhetoric came from Jonathan Edwards in the, hundreds of years ago, especially Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, preach, sermon that he did that became a fire and brimstone teaching in the church for a long time. It's still present, that feel of us as broken and wounded and and as human beings we are that, but our identity is the image of God. That's the stamp that stamped us out, was the image of God. And that has been totally overtaken with this idea of a fall.
Hmm.
Have I lost us?
No, no, not at all. No, I love that. It's interesting because, oh boy, you brought up so much. It's interesting because at certain points in my own journey, um, I would journal. I journaled my whole life.
Yeah.
It was, I think, the blank page is what saved me
Yeah, me
from
too.
all of this, if I'm
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
But I remember writing this one entry and just said, whether we're dealing with homophobia or
Hmm.
racism or, all of the things that separate us or keep people who are already hurting stuck,
Right.
why don't we let God be God?
Right. That's the
Why
other
don't
part. That's
we,
right.
our job as modeled by Jesus is to love the marginalized
Right. Right.
and welcome them in.
Right.
Period.
Period.
Hard stop.
Right. That's right.
Love and welcome.
Right.
And you know what? If
Right.
being gay or transgender or something like that were something that God wanted to be different, then once welcomed in, once having a relationship with God, all of that would get cleared up. They don't get that far, but those who do,
Mm-hmm.
like me now, finally, 35 years later,
Mm-hmm.
am making that journey into the faith of my youth.
Yeah.
I don't know that I can call myself a Christian. It just still makes,
Right.
it's still very cringe to me.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I'm certainly interested in learning more about the faith, right?
Yes.
And that's healing me. There's
Yes.
some healing going on there. Whatever our faith was, if we were told that God didn't love us,
Right.
when we do get there, guess what? I'm still married to a woman, and I still love her, and I still want
Yes.
to be with her.
Yes. And
And
God
God has
hasn't
never
told you
left
different.
me.
Yeah. God has
God
not
has
told you
never
different.
left me.
That's right.
God knows who I am and what I am,
Right.
doing and thinking, sometimes more clearly than I do.
Yes.
And has always been that way. The journey for
Yes.
me is, how often am I connecting with God's pure vision of me
Yes.
as a creation from God,
Yes.
and working to share my gifts with the world?
Yes.
Because you
Yes.
said we're a hologram. We are made in the image of,
Yes.
and I think that each person on this planet was born to express a part of God.
Absolutely, 1,000,000%. Absolutely. And let me clarify. When I said they don't get that far, what I meant was into that full acceptance. In a lot of churches, they
Yeah.
often have to leave the church because the church
Yeah.
doesn't just embrace them and let God do whatever God wants to do. because there's
Yeah.
this fear, I think, that God's not going to speak up enough. The pure-hearted people like you who keep searching, who often have to leave their church and even, you know, quit their families because it's too uh, hard. They're not being loved for who they are. But when they do pursue God, they find that God is just ravenously in love with them and
Yep.
has no issues with that,
Yep.
and these are people who never asked for this, didn't ever make a decision to be gay or transgender or any of those things. They in fact, if they had a faith background, they begged God to change them. God did
Right.
not see fit, yes, did not see fit to change them. So maybe that's not God's agenda. Maybe that's the
Right.
church's agenda to change them
Right.
because
Right.
it's uncomfortable and it's different and they've been made to be afraid of it. But God can communicate whatever's needed. But when people represent God, or claim to, then it makes it very hard for people like you, people in this community, to find what God really does think about them. People in this position have done more work than those who are telling them they're wrong have ever done in this area,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and our job is to
Yeah.
believe their lived experience. And
Well, that's the thing, right? Like,
yeah,
can we just believe each other's
right,
experience?
right,
Why do I want to debate or correct your experience?
right, right,
That doesn't make any sense to me.
right,
You know,
right.
and I absorbed people's disgust
Yes.
or concern.
So once our two kids came out and I had this dilemma, I had to find out what my faith really was made of and what God really thought about this. And I did. And here's something that was a profound turning point for me because, oh, okay, I started just, people would reach out to me. I, I started going public with support for this community, and people would reach out to me, and I would just love, they'd say things like, I came out to my mom and she won't stop crying. Or my dad wants to, he's trying to tell me I can't be gay or whatever it is. And I would just love these people. And because I know how to do that. I know how to love them. I don't know how to make them not be gay, and I don't think I should, but I know how to love them, and I did that. And people just came out of the woodwork. And I thought, if my two kids who had stories of people being, just rejected for their sexuality and their identity, if there are tons of kids out there who are hurting, then there are tons of parents out there who are hurting
Yeah.
and who are terrified. And so I began to really I created Freed Hearts to speak. We had a blog post a blog that went viral. We just kept communicating, and people just found us, and it grew and grew and grew. And now we have online support groups for moms, one for dads, and people just keep finding us because we're supposed to love each other and not get truncated in this whole correcting each other thing. That's not our job. It was never given to us as our job. It's to love each other well.
And aren't there enough things in this world outside of who somebody is loving that need to
Yes,
be
really corrected.
given the attention
Yes, like we should
of
be.
a desire to correct?
Yes, we should be.
There's enough to
There's enough.
fix.
We can stop human trafficking. We can stop the prison. There are so many areas we could actually make a difference if we wanted to. But if the priority is keeping the status quo, because it is comfortable to have this list of do's and don'ts from the church, and it's, even if it's not right, it at least is comfortable. And so, Yeah, go ahead.
No, I hear you. It's a comfort zone, right? It's a
Yeah,
comfort zone, and
right,
God is not Christian,
right. No.
right?
Jesus
So
wasn't
I'm
Christian, he was Jewish. From the very beginning in the Garden of Eden, there were two trees, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, with their to-do lists of do this and don't do that. And there was a tree of life. And we were always meant to eat from the tree of life, which is through relationship, not
I
through
like that.
rules and regulations. We have really lost our way. I think Christianity is facing a real crisis in understanding what they're meant to be here for, because Jesus was asked, what do I do to be faithful? And he said, love God and love others, love your
That's
neighbor,
right.
which means help your neighbor. And the guy said, well, who's my neighbor? Because why did he say that? Because he didn't really want to help people he didn't like. And Jesus said, well, let me tell you. And he told the story of the Good Samaritan with the guy beaten by the side of the road. Nobody knows who he is in the story, but this two religious people walk by, go to the other side of the street, so they don't have to deal with him, which is what their job is supposed to be, but they avoid him. But then this Samaritan, who was hated by the Jews, that whole
Mm.
culture was, he's the one that's the good neighbor. He's the one that is doing what God asked him to do. And so, just if we focused on that, it would take us where we need to be in our faith journey. So,
Tell us about some of the journey that you and Rob went through, Rob, your
yeah,
husband, went
yeah,
through with Freed Hearts, because you established it in 2013, is that right?
yes,
What did you find in, what areas was there need?
right,
What needs did you find that surfaced? You said the parent groups, the support groups.
right. Yeah, and the LGBTQ people who came to us to understand. And we honestly get emails constantly that say we're saving lives because we're helping LGBTQ people see that there's nothing wrong with them, that they are created in God's image, gay, transgender, lesbian, they're in God's image, and they don't need to change anything. And we help families because a lot of the families really want permission to embrace their children. They love
Absolutely.
their children, but they've been told that they're in sin if they
Right,
embrace their children. And
right.
one boy who was told you're going to hell, and his mother was told if you support him you're going to hell. Who are you to say such a thing? Who are you? And the mom said, well, I'll go. I'm going with him. But hell is a whole different topic that we also deconstructed. But a pastor is never meant to have that kind of power over people, to terrify them. So anyway, we really help families back down from their fear, to give them permission to love well, to show them that loving their children means letting their children be as they are and just loving them, not telling them they have to be different. That's not their job. When they were 3, they needed to keep them out of the street and brush their teeth, but they were never meant to tell them about their sexuality in this way. It's not theirs, it's their child's. So we've really, and the more you deconstruct, like the more you deconstruct, and and people are afraid of that, and I don't blame them. That when you first say, if I'm wrong about this, if the church has been wrong about this, what else are we wrong about? Is very scary, and you've got this rubber band ball, and you keep taking off rubber bands, and you're afraid that the center is hollow and you will have nothing, and where will your faith be? And I remember explicitly feeling that way. But you find that, yeah, when you get to the middle, you find all that is. You find God,
Yeah,
who is all
yeah.
that is. And the nothingness is where God is. And it can sound very scary to someone who's, because we were in that. We knew all the rules of the church. And you look and say, did I do all that for nothing? Is all of this wrong? But the Holy Spirit was so clear. Oh, I wanted to tell you this turning point that happened for us when I kept saying, don't let me lead anybody astray. As we did the first stuff, and I would post things on our blog at that point, and I would say, God, don't let me lead anybody astray. And I kept saying that. Isn't that a curious thing to be concerned about as the primary concern? And
I get
and
it.
every time I did, I know God. I know the voice of the Holy Spirit. And I could just feel God smiling and sending someone else for me to love well. And that repeated itself any number of times. And finally, it hit me. We were never told not to lead people astray. We were told to love well. And that's exactly what I
That's
was
right.
doing. And it just, I laughed and I cried, so to speak, to think of how much of our heart is wasted trying not to lead
Yep.
someone astray instead of
Yep.
loving well. The Good Samaritan just loved that guy. He didn't know if he was gay or
That's right.
straight or poor or rich. He just helped him. He knew he needed help and he helped him. And we're told to help the vulnerable. And so anyway, that changed everything for me, that discovery. I feel responsible for what I say, but the point is to love people well and let them
Well,
trust them to discover their own thing,
that's right. And
you
that's what
know?
I was saying earlier. I think you just said it beautifully. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier when I said, when can we trust God to be God?
Yes,
Right? Our job is to
yes,
love people so that they love themselves enough to feel worthy to seek.
yes,
Because that's what people don't seem to understand. I have a cousin and an aunt who I had a brief conversation with one time and then read one of their social posts, and they said, the world is a mess. I'm paraphrasing. The world is a mess. I can't wait for everybody to accept Jesus into their hearts.
yes,
And I
yes,
thought, what a beautiful sentiment.
yes,
If the
yes.
whole world were intended to be Christian, what a
Right,
beautiful sentiment. I
right,
understand the goodness that came from.
right,
Here's what I heard immediately, though.
right,
Respectfully, people's ability to feel good enough or safe enough to seek
right,
God
right.
has been buried
Yes,
beneath layers of self-loathing,
yes,
hypervigilance,
yes,
uh, fear of being hurt,
yes,
and being told that God does not love them the way that they are.
yes,
So
yes,
for people to accept Jesus into their heart, or to open to the idea of God loving them, we
yes,
have to get ourselves out of the way from creating the conditions that stifle that
yes,
desire or that ability to grow
yes,
toward the light, so to speak.
yes, yes. It is going toward the light. And the Bible never actually tells us to accept Jesus into our heart as our Savior. It tells us to do the thing. He says, I'm doing these things, go and do likewise. He's loving people well. Go and do likewise. And and what I thought you were going to say is, if those who identify as Christians who have accepted Jesus into their heart um, were actually living consistent with what he taught us, the world would
Yeah.
be clamoring. We know that from stories in the New Testament. The world would be clamoring to get in. It would be a whole different thing. So, and Jesus said, the world will know you're followers of me by your love. That's the
Yeah.
marker of people who follow Jesus. Is it's meant to be, is that we love well. And so that question that God turned around for me in my seeking was all the more relevant. Am I loving well? Forget about leading people astray. Am I loving well? that's the only question to ask. And some of the people we've dealt with, families will say, well, I'm loving well by telling him he can't be gay, that God doesn't want him to
That's
be gay.
right.
But
That's
it's
right.
it's
People
not,
feel, people
that's a
believe that.
they do, but that's a distortion. It's a
Hmm.
caricature of loving well, because they haven't really gone on the journey with them. The fear has closed down their brain to be willing to hear what their son's story is, or their transgender daughter's son story is, to say, oh, I didn't realize that you tried all these
Yeah.
things and I
Right.
didn't understand your lived experience. So
Right.
that's what love does. It accepts what is, and it comes alongside somebody as they are.
I kind of got a little giddy as you were talking because, and I'm going to put a trigger warning because I'm about to
Yeah.
sing a Sunday school song, which is going to probably be a painful part of this episode. But when I was a little girl, when my family was still intact, and there was the original unit of my two brothers, myself, my mother, and my father,
Yeah.
and I would go to Sunday school, and one of the songs that we always sang, I remember, um, let us walk, let us walk with each other, let us walk side by side, let us walk with each other, let us walk side by side, and together we'll spread the news that God is in the land, and they'll know we are Christians by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know we are Christians by our love.
Oh, that was beautiful. And you were right
And
on
that
pitch. That was
song is
great.
in my heart, you
Yes, it
know?
is. It is.
But 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 we have to define love.
If we just walked along and we saw people hurting and we helped them, if we did the practical things, if we mowed the lawn of the person, well, there's so many things. If we fixed the unjust systems, Jesus really talked into the injustice in the world. He was, I don't want to say the word radical because that's like a trigger word, but he
Jesus was
had,
kind of radical.
he had some things to say about the greed and the unlovingness, and the people that he called out the most, the only people he got angry at, were religious leaders. I think
The
that's important
Pharisees.
to note. So,
Mm-hmm.
but if we did what he said to do, help the widow and orphan, which really he uses those words, but it means the vulnerable, those without money, without power, without status, without any means. Um, if we help them, the world would be a different place. If we looked like Jesus, the world would be a different place. Of course, everybody would drop everything to join this move of love in the world.
Gregory Boyle, one of my favorite guys, um, started Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles. He says, the strategy of Jesus is not centered in taking the right stand on issues, but rather in standing in the right place with the outcast and those relegated to the margins.
100%. 100%. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
The,
all that's asked of us, is to stand with people and help them who are in the margins. That's right.
the measure of your compassion lies not in your service of those on the margins, but in your willingness to see yourselves in kinship with them,
Yes.
connected to them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is what you're talking about, that this is a
Yes.
relationship question.
Yes. And that's what happened to us when after our kids came out. And I knew gay people in college and in high school. So it was not like this foreign thing, but I'd been in the church for 20 years, the non-affirming church. But when our kids came out and we really immersed ourselves in this community, we're like, these are the most loving, generous, tender-hearted, kind people you'd ever want to meet. I'm talking about the LGBTQ community. They're beautiful people, and they've been
Thank you.
hurt, yes, and kicked and told God they're an abomination and God hates them. Sorry for the trigger words. Um, and it's all not true. They're still beautiful people that have been badly hurt. And when I first heard God saying, "This is your community you're going to be serving," and I was like, "What? I'm going to lose all my friends." And God said this, which was I just think is so silly now, but and God said, "This is the group you're going to be serving." I I told somebody, I told her right away, and she said, "You mean to help them not be gay?" And I was like, "No, that's
That's the
exactly what
first
I
thing that
don't
comes to
mean."
mind.
That's the first thing that came to mind. But internally, my arms went out to protect this community from people like that, people thinking like that, and that just has flattened them into these are people we need to change. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey to connect with this community. I feel more connected to them than I don't know any group.
Thank you for, lifting up the colorful, creative, loving spirit of the queer community,
Mhm.
because that's been my experience too. People go straight to the
Yeah,
parade, and, we could talk about that's another show.
right.
What I want to say here, based on what you've been talking about, Susan, first, I want to say publicly, thank you so much for the work that you do.
You're welcome. It is
It
my
is so
pleasure.
critical. And I got to tell you, I wish my mom would have had you and this
Yeah,
organization and the support materials, because my mom loved me so much. She
yeah.
passed in February, for those
Oh,
listening that don't realize why I'm talking about her in
yes.
past tense. Um, my beautiful mother died in
Mm.
February, and we went
So,
through hell about this.
yeah,
And she loved me all the way through it. And
yeah,
her hurt came out at times too, because one of the
yes,
things that I had to realize is when I came out of the closet, I killed her daughter.
yeah,
I
yeah.
killed the idea of her
That's right.
daughter.
Right,
When
right,
she had me, she thought frills and wedding and
right,
wear my wedding dress
right.
and, do her hair and all this. I didn't like any of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
But when I came out of the closet, like it
yeah.
just it just killed all of her dreams of the idea of me. And
Right.
she had to grieve that.
Yes, she did.
And she
Yes,
did.
yes.
But she also, there were so many choices that she made that she told me about later, that she did to keep me in the house, because she was terrified that if I left, I would never
Yeah,
either make it back or come back.
yes. That's a founded fear. That happens. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And I will tell you too, and I'm sharing this about my brothers, which I don't know that I've said publicly before, but it's my story to tell. There was a time when I was in my last relationship and my son was younger, that we went and we visited both of my brothers and their families. And about a year later or several months later, I talked to one of them, and he was telling me about what him and his family were doing. And I said, "Man, I really wish that I lived closer so that I could just pop in for lunch."
Oh no, I know what's
And
coming.
I was close to my brothers,
Mm-hmm.
and I heard his throat tighten,
Mm-hmm.
and I heard all of the hurt take hold of him.
Yeah.
And through the tightened throat, he says, "Jen, I have to tell you, honestly, if you lived closer, I don't know if we'd see you any more than we do now."
Mm-hmm.
Because he was in Illinois and I'm in California. And I said, "What? What does that
Mm-hmm.
mean?" And he said, uh, "We don't know how to explain your family to our children."
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to call my other brother and got the same thing.
Yes. Yes.
And essentially, I was being told, "Go away."
Yes. Yes. You were. You were exactly.
Years later, kids grew up. One of my brother's daughters brought her gay friends around, and were her best little friends, were her little gay boy friends. And they both were exposed to
Mm-hmm.
this through whatever experiences they had. And my younger brother, I
Mm-hmm.
asked him not too long ago, I said, "What happened? What changed?" And he said, "We did. We grew up."
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I think that's
Yeah.
important, because we are all growing up, and we aren't growing up at the
Yes.
same time. I've had my
Yes.
stepdad told me that my mom went to bat for me every single time when I was gone, with her sisters,
Yeah.
with her,
Yeah.
with my brothers, and it was
Right.
killing her because she loved all of us equally.
Yeah. I wish I'd been there too. And I hear that a lot from people. She supported you because you were the one marginalized and you should have been supported. That's what you do, is the one who's being hurt. You reach out to them. You reach out on their behalf, I mean. And I think that, I mean, that is my natural predisposition. And I assume it's because I was bullied all through sixth grade. Every day of sixth grade, I was bullied. And oh gosh, I hated it. But it just developed in me such a heart, or released in me such a heart for the marginalized, that this is like, oh, you want to hurt them, come through me. And that's just how it needs to be. And I want to say one more little thing. You said that was beautiful what you shared, just beautiful on every level. And I want to say, as an encouragement to parents out there, because you said that she had to grieve her daughter that she thought she had. If you're really, like, the more you grow and mature as a parent, the more you realize you have to grieve your expectations regularly,
Absolutely.
because that's a stark one, that she thought you'd be straight and frilly and you were gay and not so frilly. But parents may want the son to be the football player, but really he likes to play piano, or all kinds of expectations we have. And the sooner you can recognize that that is your expectation, it's not your child's expectation, it's yours, and surrender it, then the sooner you can release your child to be who they're really here to be. Because they have their own life to live, and it's not the one you have in mind. It's like never the one you have in mind. So that's just a heads up for people, for parents who have the ears to hear.
I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
And I think this brings me back to our conversation a little bit earlier about the faith question.
Yeah.
And I've sort of come to this understanding that we sort of come through our mothers,
Yes.
but we are God's idea.
Yes. Yes.
And as parents, we are not the owners of our children
Right.
or the bosses of our children so much
Right.
as we are the stewards of God's
Right.
kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And I love that your mother went to bat for you. I love that. I'm so glad that she did that for you. She just knew it intuitively.
I'm sure she
It's
had her times. I mean, I
sure.
can't paint her an angel. I'm sure she had her
Sure.
times because it's hard to be put in that position. And she, like I
Yeah.
said, loved her sisters and loved
Yeah.
her boys.
Yeah.
And she was put in a hard place, and
Yeah.
she and I certainly had
Sure.
some conflicting moments that were very painful, I think, for both of us.
The coming around in your brothers, was it both brothers maybe,
Yeah.
happened because they went deeper. They deconstructed their fear around it. They saw it more, in their friends, the kids' friends, and they didn't. They just set down their fear. They were able to get to the bottom of that. So that's another, word to the wise of anyone listening, that if you have an issue with an LGBTQ person over this, your fear is what deconstructing that will really help. In other words, you go to God to find out what your part is instead of telling the other person. Because we kind of want to say, if you'll just get back in the closet, I will be happier. That's really what we're
Right.
saying to them. Instead of
Right.
saying, okay, this is what is, and love is to accept what is. Okay, God, I need your help. I'm short of love that extends this far. Will you fill me with love for this person that I'm having a hard time understanding?
Yeah.
And yeah, it is a journey, to be sure. And I have a lot of compassion. And when we're taught that we're supposed to keep our family from doing bad things, we are taught that in the church. It's a lot of behavior management, sin management. Uh, then, it makes us into a distortion that is not just loving the way we're meant to love.
Right.
So
Be on a journey with each other, be on a
yeah,
journey that is full of love.
yeah, and find out, because I know this community. I know this community is here as a service to the world to say, are you going to love? Are you going to learn to love me? That even though you've been taught that I'm really bad, really wrong, whatever, and the church would benefit so much by embracing this community as their opportunity from God to learn to love well. The whole thing would be different. The whole thing would be different.
Agreed. Let's meet people as individuals, and let's
Yes.
leave the big ideas that are offensive to us, leave them alone.
Yeah.
Just live our lives, do
Right.
our own work to
Right.
look at ourselves and see what's going on inside of ourselves, and align with a loving God that is, modeling love your neighbor type thing, if
Right.
you identify as Christian. And
Yes.
and let's just love each other individually, because like I said before, as a parent, if you teach your children about healthy relationships by having a healthy relationship, then they will have
Yes.
healthier relationships.
Yeah, that's right.
If you have these conversations with your children, straight or gay,
Yeah.
they're going to have healthier relationships. There
Right.
is dysfunctional relationships all over the world, and
Yeah.
we've got to stop relegating them to sexuality or gender identities. Like, just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. Yeah.
check in with yourself. Write a list of what you're afraid of and why you're afraid of it,
Yeah.
and take it to God
That's right.
and
That's
do
right.
your work.
Do your
And
own
then
work.
and then try to
Oh,
get this vision of open
right.
your heart beyond that which you believe is true.
Yes. The Bible has passages that have been pulled out of context, used wrongly, but used against the LGBTQ community. I'm talking 6 out of 30,000 passages. But
Yeah.
there are some 300 that tell us to help the poor. So maybe we need to put things in perspective. There are dozens that talk about oppression of the poor and power used to oppress. So there are a lot more, as you said very early in this conversation, there are a lot more things to be concerned about. Why don't you just let gay people be the way they are? Let trans people be who they are. And remember those words, to treat others as you want to be treated. Jesus said it, but it also, every major religion says, treat others the way you want to be treated, and don't treat them as you don't want to be treated. Would you want to be treated the way LGBTQ people are treated? No. The answer is no. Then don't treat them that way. Would you want to be treated by the society in total the way poor people are treated? Oh, you wouldn't? Then maybe we should change that. Would you want to be treated the way Black people are treated or brown people are treated? You would not, guaranteed. So let's focus on those areas.
I agree, 100%. And I think the real disconnect there is we all struggle with prejudice and bias based on where we were brought up. But all of that said, it doesn't mean that we have to be less successful in our own lives, that our work has to be less lucrative, that we can't aim for the stars and build a business and be successful and love our children. What it's asking is that we make room for everybody who's alive.
Yeah, that's right.
But the disconnect there, Susan, I think the big disconnect, whether it's dealing with gay or trans people, or whether it's dealing with poor people, whether it's dealing with people who don't speak the language as a primary language, or Black folks, or whomever it is that have been othered, right?
Right.
The thing is that I don't know that the people realize the harm being caused.
Right.
I think a lot of times they think it's because the other is not trying hard enough,
I agree.
is not smart enough, is broken
Yeah.
or perverted. But
Right.
there's so much humanity to be recognized, and so much depth of
Yeah.
God's image in folks
Right.
sitting in prison, folks sitting on the street homeless, folks in
Right.
the LGBT community, and, also in the communities that we don't call marginalized.
And if you're one of those who's very good at business and you've got a lot of money, find places that you just described that need support and help them, that are bringing about change, loving in a profound way, because that is needed too. They need to be supported to be able to do those things.
My goodness, Susan, nobody would know by listening to this podcast how much you and I laugh when we talk.
Yes.
We're so fun, and this was a very serious conversation, but there's so much to talk about, though. Yeah, there's so much
to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to think, oh, people are going to tell me I'm wrong or I'm stupid or
Right,
whatever.
right.
Listen,
Yeah.
I'm not looking for your approval anymore. Saying that I am right. I am not saying that this is the way of things. I am sharing my perspective and my experience. I'm putting it into the ether
Yes.
for others to consider. And
Yes.
what it does out there in the world is not up to me.
Yeah.
That's up to God.
Yeah.
The dissonance that it may reconcile in people, the comfort that it might disturb.
Oh,
those
sure.
are all the things. Those are all the things that precede, in my experience, growth.
Yes, 100%. I agree.
We're just at different parts
Right.
of our journey. Stop sticking pins in people.
Right. Physician, heal yourself. Like, there's a lot for us to look at before we
Yeah.
look at other people. I so appreciate just the whole conversation. So great. Yeah. You're very
me too.
insightful and full of love and life. It's a joy.
Thank you, Susan. That means a lot.
We love our children, and we fight for our children, and we defend our children, and we learn and grow, and we help people understand what this is all about. And it's a big journey, but the world is growing and in their understanding, and we're helping protect the marginalized. Right now, transgender people are under serious attack, and we're pushing back and trying to raise visibility. The laws are meant to erase them from public spaces, and we are pushing back and saying, no, people are transgender. That's how it is. So yeah, it's about awareness and understanding, and not letting things, letting people get away with hurting this community. That's what it's about.
Thank you for that. So, Susan, before we end here, I know you've got some things going on. Tell us about what you're working on now.
I'm actually just about to publish my memoir, which is
Wow.
the story of coming through a lot of trauma and finding my core of strength and healing, all the healing you talked about. I've had to really go through and seeing the fallout of so anyway, it's my story in a profound application to other people too. I think it'll be a very good read, and I will do a podcast episode about it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have you on again, specifically to lift that up, to lift that effort up. I think, and I want folks to know that, Susan's challenges with life did not begin when she came out to the church friends about her children.
No.
This is a woman who was brought to the end of herself and needed to grab onto God to survive
Yeah.
very early.
I lost both parents and three brothers by the time I was 24 that all died. And so there was a lot of trauma and breaking and being flattened and rising up again. So, and that's only a third of the book. There's
Yeah.
all the healing and all the other stuff comes in, the second two thirds, but
What a light you are in the world, and what a beacon of
yeah,
hope you have been for families.
yeah,
And when I was during COVID is when I believe I met you. Is that right? Or was it
yes,
earlier than that?
it was a little
I
earlier than
was
that. Yeah,
a little earlier than that. I came across your site or your TEDx talk or something,
yeah,
and I reached out to you. And I was
yeah,
in the middle of some of the hardest reconstruction, deconstruction stuff of
yes,
my life, and seeing your TED talk about at the end, I think you ended with, "And I chose my child," and
yeah,
I was like, "Who is this woman?" And so I
yeah,
called you and reached out, and we just started talking about some of the common ground that we had in doing this healing work in the world.
yeah,
And we've agreed
yeah,
that coming back together 5 years, 6 years later, we've both grown so much and been through so
yes,
much, right?
yes,
That
yes, divine timing. That's right.
a whole new way of walking
Yeah,
alongside each other as sisters in this world. Yep.
yes.
I love it. Love you.
Love you.
If this conversation sparked something for you, or if you want to dive deeper, head over to soulnotskin.com and take a look around. Grab a copy of the book, Soul Not Skin, free resources, or get on the wait list for our next workshop. I hope you'll pull up a chair next time to hang out with us again. We're figuring out this world and ourselves at the same exact time, growing as we listen to the stories of others. Let's keep getting to know each other. After all, we are in this together. See you next time.